So today we're going to have a look at a gentleman called Nick Tenconi. He's the leader of the UK Independence Party. He's been around the role since last summertime, but he's recently assumed the office of leader in February of this year, 2025. I recently watched an interview that Mr. Tenconi done, and he laid out his case, and I'm going to cover my thoughts on the things he said, how he positions himself within the political spectrum, and what I believe is going to be happening in future regarding UKIP.
Would you describe yourself as radical?
So in terms of policies and being a Christian conservative, absolutely. There is only one future for Britain, and that is to save Britain, restore Britain to its former magnificence and glory and pride, and to deliver justice back to the British people. Now, in the same breath, the populace complains, especially on the right, and rightly so, of just how much of a situation we are in. The only thing necessary now is radical. There is no appeasement. There is no middle ground. It absolutely has to be radical in order to deliver justice, in order to save Britain. Would I consider myself to be a radical person? I've never thought about it. I suppose I can be very dedicated. I can be incredibly disciplined, and I can be a bit like a Rottweiler when I get my teeth into something. But in terms of policy, absolutely, and it's what's required.
Yeah. And would you describe yourself as a nationalist?
Certainly. So I'm a nationalist, and a lot of people on the right, both now and historically, would describe themselves as nationalists. Of course, I am a Christian nationalist. Now, nationalism has formed the basis for an awful lot of conflict and bloodshed with our European brothers and sisters over many centuries, over many wars, when in reality we were indeed united in Christ. That is a wrong which needs to be written. We need to right that wrong. So I am a nationalist, but I am a Christian and a servant of God before anything else. So our nationalism is a Christian nationalism. It is Christianity that built the West. It is Christianity that built Britain. Culture and faith are one and the same thing. Therefore, in order to get our country back, we are going to have to go back to our roots. So we insert Christian nationalism a tier higher above nationalism. You also have different types of nationalism. So, for example, books will have been written on this. I identify a ethno-nationalism or an ethno-nationalist. This is someone who puts skin color above nationalism, above everything else. Then you've got your atheist nationalism. So your basic nationalist who is not a believer in God, for example, which you could argue is the majority of nationalists. Then you have your Christian nationalism, and that is where we must travel back to, and that is what will save Britain.
How did Mr. Tenconi come across in the interview? Well, he came across as an extremely direct man. I quite like direct people, and I prefer it when people are truthful. And I think that's one of the things I like about Nigel Farage. He has that, where people look at him and they can say, oh, he's speaking from the place that he believes in. And Nick Tenconi comes across 100% as a man who seems to believe in what he's talking about. And that is his strength, I believe. But it's also one of his weaknesses with the public. The reason that I believe it's his strength and his weakness, well, people do want to look at people and they want to believe. So when you're watching a politician, our truth detectors are whirring round all the time, and we're looking our little sonars there, and we're constantly trying to ascertain whether the person who's talking to us is telling the truth. And 100%, I watched this gentleman here, and he believes what he's saying. I mean, there's little doubt about that. He has full belief in everything that he's talking about. And conversely, that was a problem I had with him by the end of the interview, in that he was coming across extremely passionately, even to the point of, I would term that a mild form of direct aggression, which is a kind of a passive-aggressive nature that some people have. But certainly Nick Tenconi, over the course of the full interview, over the full hour, by the end, on certain topics, his voice was a little bit raised. He took on more aggressive body postures. And I will leave a link to the full chat he had with another YouTube channel here, but I'll put the full link below. She seemed like quite a pleasant lady who was completing the interview, but I haven't seen this podcast before. But certainly Nick Tenconi did come across as a little aggressive. So what's the content of Mr. Tenconi's chatter? Well, he's a Christian theologist, and in his own words, he believes in a Christian conservative government, with faith being at the heart of that. And I'm choosing his words, not mine. It's essentially a culture and faith melded together, and it's nationalist Christianity. Now, what's my views on this? Well, we used to have a Christian country. I did a check today, and the stats are reflecting about 46% of this country still labels themselves as Christian. I would imagine that a majority of those people are relatively mild Christians. I would kind of put myself into that bracket. I hold to Christian values, although as Mr. Tenconi did describe me, he described me in what you could term as more atheist nationalistic. And that's probably a better way to describe a lot of people, those people who kind of hold and subscribe to Christian values and consider themselves that they would like to be part of a nation state. And that's not a reflection on racism, the twisty way that gets reflected in modern culture. I don't view nationalism as racism in any way. I view nationalism as a sovereign state. It's quite straightforward to me. There's no element of race to that whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned. And so the atheist element to that, as Mr. Tenconi described, I think that's a fair description of a lot of people. And that's one of the problems with this UKIP party being led by Nick Tenconi. It's far too much about religion.
The policies are what's important. I am not important. The party is what's important. The policies are what's important. Judge every single day the magnitude of which we are discussing. The future of Britain, prosperity and happiness-wise, but justice to be delivered to the British people, requires the magnitude of the likes of which we're discussing here. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. Judge me every single day. On policies, on action and direction, you will not see cowardice. You will not see flip-flopping. You will see unwavering courage with the shield of faith and the armour of God.
Yeah.
Give me that chance.
There's too much of it. And the phrase he used a lot of the time was the armour of God and the shield of faith. Now, this type of rhetoric is something out of a playbook, from the Crusades of a long time ago. I mean, if you understand history, you'll probably have a better way to describe that type of thing. But, at one point in the interview, he said something along the lines of, "It would be fantastic if I were to be martyred for my beliefs, because in being martyred, I would become a saint."
Do you ever not fear your way of self-defending yourself?
No, so certainly not. There are so many things in life that I fear. If it is to be an enemy, if it is to be an opponent that comes for me, when they do, this I do not fear. This would be a great privilege and a great joy if I'm to be martyred for my beliefs. Naturally, as Christians, we believe in sainthood, so that would be fantastic.
So that's quite a statement. He uses the terms as well, God willing, and you do hear this type of term sometimes when you're listening to Muslims talk. So they'll say, they'll have a sentence and then they'll say this, or God willing, inshallah, I believe is one way to put it. And so this is the type of Christian agenda. This just isn't going to work. This is not going to work in modern politics. And like all right-wing parties, when you're talking about the topic of migration, there are very, very, very strict dividing lines. And so on the topic of remigration, Nick Tenconi was extremely direct, but also the way he described it was worrying to me.
This outbreeding, or the great replacement theory, this is going to keep happening.
Yeah.
So it's more important for me to talk about the remigration policy at UKIP. We distinguish between illegal immigration, legal immigration, and remigration. So remigration is where we send unintegrated migrant communities who refuse to learn English, who refuse to assimilate, who refuse to decree and declare that this is a Christian land, who subscribe to terrorist organizations, who are here to spread the caliphate, who are here to subvert Christianity and British culture. There's a whole list of things. Those people we're sending home. And if we can't send them home, we're sending them somewhere else, or they'll remain detained. So that's that in 30-second format. That's what remigration looks and sounds like.
Now, I'm a person who would be quite happy with net zero migration. I believe that we need to just stop migration and let's just sort all of the problems out now, and let's have a long extended conversation over a period of 5 to 10 years where everyone can consider what the best way forward is, and then we can work out where we are going from here. Mr. Tenconi was very, very straightforward. He said, close border. That's it. Gone. And then, essentially, he was of the belief, and I've looked at his X profile, and on his X profile, he said that he believes that there needs to be up to 10 million people deported. And in his words in this interview, unintegrated migrants who refuse to assimilate, send these people home or will detain them. So that kind of language is very, very aggressive. So what Mr. Tenconi is saying here, if you've come into this country and you're not prepared to kneel down before the cross of Christ, as it were, then you're going to be detained until you leave the country. So that's essentially what he's talking about there, is detainment camps for people who've already arrived here who won't kneel before the cross of Christ. Now, in terms of mass deportations, and this is something that's been raised recently with the Nigel Farage reform and Rupert Lowe debacle, the reason Nigel Farage walks away from this is because it's never, ever, ever going to happen in a million universes. It's not going to happen. In order to enact change, in order to do anything, you have to get near power. And here's really my summary of why you should just discard UKIP. If you believe UKIP is going to be the way forward, this is the reason why you should move on from that. I understand if you have Christian beliefs, and I'll understand even if you have strong Christian beliefs. You can believe anything you want to, and I'm happy with that. You can also believe that immigration is a massive problem in this country, and I would subscribe to that too. You can believe even that we need to deport some of the illegal people, or all of the illegal people, and that's a point which I would debate with you, but the reality of it is that it's never going to happen. It's never ever going to happen. If this country were to vote in either the Conservatives or the Labour Party in 2029, then we've got big problems. Now you can say to me, oh well, Nigel Farage, he's this, he's that, or whatever it is. You can say anything. And some of those criticisms that you've got of Nigel Farage may well be true. However, the only party that's going to get anywhere near power is Reform. Now you can say, oh, well, Reform will get into power and then they'll double back and they'll do this and they'll do that. My response to that would be, even if that's true, are you trying to tell me that that's going to be worse than either Labour or the Tories? Reform are going to be a better option than Labour or the Tories, and it's only Reform that's going to get anywhere near anything at the next election. If you care about this country and you want to put an end to mass illegal migration and mass migration and move to net zero migration, then you need to vote Reform, because they're the only party in a million universes who are going to be able to deliver it. Nick Tenconi is a Christian fundamentalist. And Christian fundamentalists, and with the religious fervour that Mr. Tenconi has, he's never going to get anywhere near power ever, because he's too frightening and worrisome to the electorate. People will watch this man and they will see a very strident individual who is uncompromising and direct, yes, but also this is not a man who you would ever trust to run this country. It's just not going to happen. And, the icing on the cake there was, you can say we should stop all illegal migration, and I would agree with that. However, what you can't do is put 5 to 10 million people into detainment camps before you deport them. A lot of people are already here, and regardless of whatever you believe, at some juncture you're going to have to accept that those people are here. The way to deal with that is to stop future migration and to develop a better sense of our own national identity without worrying about these stupid topics like remigration and mass deportations, because it's never going to happen. It might make you feel good in the moment, but it's not living in reality. Thanks very much for your time.